So word on the street is that you guys have become familiar with Mr. John Brown and his Riz here. And it just so happens that he's a little tiny one of my special interests. So I thought it'd be cool to tell you about John Brown and why he's the greatest American hero you never hear about. John Brown is known for a couple of things. A big one is Harper's Ferry, in which he took over an arsenal to try to basically kick off a slave revolt to help free the slaves and break slavery in America. But he was also famous for the Potawatomi Massacre, which was basically the match that started the fire that was bleeding Kansas. Now, the Potawatomi Massacre is what it sounds like. It was a massacre. It was a massacre in which abolitionist, anti-slavery activists went into a pro-slavery colony and the pro-slavery activists, owners, etc. And it all started here with the sacking of Lawrence. Kansas at the time was still a territory. It was about to become a state, and as it was becoming a state, they started having the debate of, will slavery be legal in Kansas or will it not be legal? There were a lot of people in Kansas who were on the abolitionist side of things. They did not want slavery like they had in the South. And Lawrence, Kansas in particular was kind of a stronghold for abolitionist, anti-slavery activists. They had the Kansas Free State and the Herald of Freedom, both of which were very intense abolitionist papers that spread the word of abolition in Kansas and elsewhere. Well, in the sacking of Lawrence, the pro-slavery guys came in and destroyed those papers, and then they destroyed a hotel, and they tried to kill a bunch of the abolitionists, but they didn't. Only one of their guys died by accident because they're morons. Anyway, it led to the Potawatomi Massacre. John Brown, his sons, and some other abolitionist, anti-slavery supporters said, you know what? We're tired of this, because there had been so many violent attacks on the abolitionists by the pro-slavers. So these abolitionists, John Brown, his sons, and their men said, no more of this. So he and his sons headed towards the territorial pro-slavery area where these men were living, and they carried out the massacre. They started here. James P. Doyle. They spared his son, but they spared his youngest son, but they took his older sons, William Drury. They took him out into the darkness, and they then went to the home of Allen Wilkinson, ordered him outside, dispatched him. Then they went to the cabin of James Harris, and it turns out that James Harris had these 3 other men in there with him who were pro-slavers. So Brown and his sons and the other abolitionists took him outside, questioned them, decided to let 2 of them go, and then dispatched the rest. They killed 5 pro-slavers who were trying to turn Kansas into a legal slavery state. They took care of them, and they made a statement, which kicked off Bleeding Kansas. Was then a war between the abolitionists and the pro-slavers. John Brown was a man who stood on business for what he knew to be right and what he knew to be the truth. And there's so much more you can learn about him. He also protected indigenous people. He put indigenous people on his land to protect them so that people can get that, a whole bunch of stuff. He was truly an admirable man. You should look into him.